I'm so glad we have some people joining us today, the end of their day, grade 1, 2, 3 crew. So Tanya's going to take you through a slide deck, but maybe I'll let you, Tanya, introduce people, and I'll manage the chat if there are any questions. And I'm Pam.
Awesome, thank you. So hi, I am Tanya Steele. And I'm an instructional coach now, but just before this, I was a virtual teacher. So that is me. Nicole, do you introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Nicole Hooper. I am the Learning Commons coach for our board, half-time. And for my other half-time, I teach kindergarten and part of Learning Commons at my school as well. But I'm new to kindergarten this year. So for my whole career, I've been teaching primary. So depending on our combined grades, I've always had 1, 2, or 3. So yeah, welcome everybody.
Awesome. And then we have Val, Laura, and Laureen, who are from the virtual school that are going to be here to kind of help talk us through some of these things and talk about things from their experiences. So we really appreciate that they are here to talk through with experience. So hello. I also wanted to mention that down here, you'll see in that bottom right-hand corner, there's a bit.ly for the slide deck. So if you wanted to come back to this at another time, you could just click on that and that will bring you through to the slide deck.
I'll put it in the chat there. So it's BI7B5Y. Okay.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. And then Nicole is going to do our acknowledgement.
Just before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we are all gathered virtually is part of the traditional territory of the Odawa, Chippewa, Potawatomi, and Delaware nations. And this is just a picture in 2019, actually, when the St. Clair River froze over and we were trying to ice fish with absolutely no luck, but we were trying to ice fish on the St. Clair River. So just very grateful from the things that we get from our land. What we're doing with our students is they've each sent us in a picture and of them outdoors enjoying it some way. And we put it on our morning announcements. And then they explain the picture and we talk about how some of the wonderful things we do that we're grateful for on our land.
Awesome. And I just love that idea.
These are my kids, so they have permission.
Awesome. So some of the things that we're going to be discussing this session is about schedule. We know that that's a topic of major discussion. The content and tools, so kind of how we are delivering our lessons through the different tools and then the specifics of how we're doing that. And that's going to take up the majority of our time. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So if we don't touch on something, please feel free to type your questions into the chat box or just pipe in and ask a question or wait until the end if you would like as well. And Pam, as she mentioned, is kind of checking out the chat. So she'll let us know if there's something that you would like to say. So first, to talk about the schedule, we know that it gets up to that 225 minutes for grades 1 to 8, but we really wanted to dig into what that looks like for each of the teachers. So Val, did you maybe want to chat about that first with your schedule?
Sure, yeah. So what we have come to love in the virtual world is whiteboards. Tons and tons of whiteboard activities for our schedules for that. So when we are working in the mornings for morning meets, it's a lot of engagement and participation with whiteboards during lessons, because as you can tell, as you guys can probably tell, it's a lot harder to engage students through a screen than it is in the classroom. So when you are doing whole group instructions in the classroom, you're able to be a bit more animated, and over a screen, it had felt like it was a big task. So whiteboards, or if your students don't have that, just paper and pencil has been a great way to ensure that there's participation in that whole group instruction. But yeah, so we just usually move from whole group instruction with participation in it to modeling what the assignment's going to be, into independent work with small groups built into that. And it's, we in the virtual world have 3 80-minute blocks, but I know that in our homeschools, your schedules are looking a little bit different than that.
And so that's really why we didn't want to give you a schedule of what they do, a specific schedule, because their time frame is different from what yours is, because we have to account for your curriculum partners with French or prep coverage and things like that. So we're going to dig in more as well with kind of what they do during the day during their scheduled time. So like, what does that math block look like, or that language block look like? Laura, did you want to add anything to this, or Laureen?
Sure. When we are looking at what does that learning really look like in our classroom, I found that brain breaks and movement breaks become even more necessary with virtual because they're spending so much of their day staring at a screen. So when I'm looking at what my math block might look like, we're starting off with our number talk and our minds on at the beginning, and we do that together. And then I normally provide some sort of movement break to go right after that before we dive into the content of that math lesson. So although that's kind of our jumping off board, I find they do need time, especially in grade 1, to be moving around. And something I found that to be really helpful with the actual learning is just having them bring tools with them. So in September, October, I got really kind of pigeonholed on virtual manipulatives, and that was great. And there are so many virtual manipulatives out there. I know Toy Theater is something I use a lot, but I kind of forgot about the importance of them doing hands-on manipulatives, and that they can do that at home, even if they don't have the tools we would use in the school. They can do that. So often I'll post in my morning schedule, like the night before, asking bring a certain number of objects. So whatever our number is that we're going to be working with. In grade 1, we're often looking at math up to 20 or up to 50. And so I'll say, bring 20 objects with you today: Lego, crayons. I have students bring guitar picks or paper clips, whatever you have that you can just gather 20 of, so they can be moving them around.
And I think that's a really important
way
thing.
As less.
Sorry, I think my internet cut out there for a second, but I think that's a really important thing that you are doing for them, that they providing kind of those concrete materials for them to still be able to use, and encouraging that use. Awesome, thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other things that we've identified as being really useful. So we're going to start digging into Seesaw, and using these Seesaw icons is really important when you are giving the instructions for the students, because it gives them a really clear picture of what they need to do and what buttons they're going to have to click to complete the activity. And so we're going to kind of talk about some of that modeled instruction right now. And that's going to lead us into the guided instruction and independent time. So what does the learning look like when we are modeling that learning? And so first we were going to talk about using that recording tool. And I think Laura was going to talk about this one. So do you want me to stop screen sharing? And do you want to screen share, Laura?
You can keep that up right now, just the visual that's on there. That's great. So when I'm looking at these tools, I use 3 things to help my students on Seesaw to help make the instructions a little bit more user-friendly for them. So in that student instruction box, I start by typing out my list, and those picture shortcut cues that Tanya had shown before, like the photo to post a picture of the camera button. I embed those so that they get that visual reminder of what that is saying. And then also I make sure to voice record any instructions that are in there, so they can hear my voice telling them what to do. And then in the activity itself, at the beginning, the first slide of any activity that I'm posting for them, I'll usually have modeled what that looks like by screen recording myself completing one of the examples. So then they can see what that looks like for them modeled out in case they don't remember what we talked about during our live class. So I hit them kind of in all three spots just to really reinforce what those instructions are, what the expectations are, and what that looks like.
So Laura, that sounds like a lot of work though, typing, voice record, video, like to do that. Is it time well, like really well spent, or is it like, yeah, it's nice to have?
It's a lot of work, as you're probably learning with virtual, everything is time consuming, but I found the things I'm spending my time on now are things that I felt have paid off in benefits for the class, more so than the time you're spending. So there were a lot of things in September that I was spending my time on that I didn't really find were benefiting students for the amount of time we were expending on it. But this one, with all three methods, I found has really reduced the amount of questions, both from students and parents, about confusion. So it's helped make it a lot clearer and hit all the different types of learners, whether they need to read it, whether they need to hear it, and whether they need to see it modeled again for them. So I found that to be beneficial just for kind of targeting each learner in my classroom.
I guess if we're looking at that modeled to independent work path that we want students to take, this is fostering that independence. If they're like, rather than standing in line waiting for you to answer a question, they can answer it themselves.
And if you're looking to prioritize when to do all three and when can I get away without including that video model, just think about ahead of where is your activity heading. And if you're going to be available and most of your class stays online for that Seesaw activity, then maybe the video modeling isn't something that you need to be prioritizing because your class is going to be able to ask you questions live. But if this is a lesson where you're going to be off with a smaller group and you're not going to be as available for questions independently, then that's maybe when you embed that video and you can prioritize that.
And we were also talking that we think this would be really useful if you have a number of students that are doing that option 2 for the option. So if they are not going to be participating in the live lessons with you, this is a way that you're able to still be able to give them that instruction and to be able to still make sure that they know what they need to do and what those expectations are, that you're really clear on that before they try to do the work.
I think that's important. And I think parents are very appreciative, and the children too, because then they still feel included in the learning. Maybe they were sick that day, or they are just option 2 and they're not joining the classes. So they still feel part of and included in that learning too.
And we may have families that are still trying to figure out access to devices too. So, Google Meet are the priority, but then when it's time to do some independent work, students might have a lapse before they come back to actually do that task, and they may go, what are you talking about? Lorene, do you use that video tool in your creations?
For sure. I think something else that I've just, it's like we throw our common sense out and think that we have to have a different set of rules when we teach virtual, but if we can just remember that what works in the classroom. So for example, like Laura was saying, you're making some detailed instructions there, but there is nothing wrong with sharing your screen and going over those instructions with them. So have them look at what they're going to see when they do get to Seesaw, and you can go over it verbally and just show them. And then the first time they see it isn't going to be when they go to their Seesaw activity, if they've chosen option 1 and are doing it online. But you can go over it step by step by sharing your screen where you have written the instructions.
So model with the tool that you're actually going to have kids use the tool.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good point, because you can go in and you can manipulate it just like the kids can manipulate inside those activities and show them how they can move things around and voice and use those tools in that specific activity, but then as well they get to learn how to do it themselves.
Awesome. And I was just going to kind of do a quick demonstration of what that looks like here in case anyone didn't see. So let's say that we wanted the student to demonstrate to us what 116 and 118 is. Just for example, as a math question, we want them to show us that. So what they could do is do the work in their pen here, and they could use, if they're using an iPad, it's really handy to be able to write with that. But they might want to they might be using a mouse or different things. So as they're working through their question, they might show you, or you're going to have a bunch of work on your screen, and you don't necessarily know if they knew how to do that or if somebody was telling them to do that. That's a big thing that's kind of come up with us in the virtual world. So one thing that we found that's really handy, and you can either, Laura talked about using this to demonstrate to the students what to do, but you can have them use this tool to show you that they know what to do. So that's this microphone tool over here. And you can't see, like you're not gonna be able to see them as they're recording, but they could actually write live, and they can use this little arrow that pops up to kind of show you and to explain their thinking as they're doing it. As it records, it puts a big block on there so you know that this is a recording, and then when you play it, you can hear what they're talking about, and then you can see in real time as they were explaining what their thinking was. So we think this is a really powerful tool that can help you to see what the students really actually know. I'm gonna stop that one. Did anyone have anything to add for that one?
Well, just a question for you. So with that tool, what happens if you're getting some questions that the students don't have that specific feature on theirs? What may be some troubleshooting?
Right, so some students might not have that feature if they have an older device. So that's been something where the device might need to be updated, where it can't record. What we've often found as well is an issue sometimes is if a student initially goes to record in Seesaw and it asks for permissions for the microphone or camera, and they click that no, they don't have permissions, then it will not allow them to do this. So kind of our first recommendation for these is to go back and check those permissions, or ask the parents to check those permissions within Seesaw if they have, or sorry, within the settings of Seesaw, to see if that has been disabled, because that will not allow them to record it. But typically a lot of them have a number of those abilities, and they might also need to update the app, if it's an app, if they're working from a Chromebook or a PC, it should automatically update there.
I also would note for our new teachers online that when your iPad students want to record on Seesaw, they have to exit out of their Google Meet or hang up on their Google Meet for their microphone to work in Seesaw. So I don't know if some of you have been finding that with your iPad friends, that their microphone hasn't been working in Seesaw. Just prompt them to hang up on the Google Meet, record themselves, and then come back into the Google Meet after they're done recording.
That is a really good piece of information to give that you learned the hard way, Val. So thank you very much.
Actually, one of my students with an iPad is that she was the one who was like, actually, this is how you fixed it. I was like, thank you. So.
And that's an awesome thing, isn't it? A lot of times the kids come up with these solutions faster and better than we can. So that's awesome.
So I think that's worthy of repeat. So we're in the Meet.
Yeah.
And I record on my Seesaw. My microphones are not going to get along. So I'm going to leave my Meet, record on Seesaw, and come back to my Meet and show off my work.
Yes, it's almost like the microphone on the iPad doesn't want to be in two apps at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm putting these tips in the chat too, so we'll have a little record of them.
All right, so did you want me to
Perfect, thank you.
Here, Tanya?
Sure, that would be awesome.
Okay, so this is just an example of one of my timer slides. I include the steps of what they're needing to do. And then I have this like all done section where if they're all done, there's both words and picture clues of what they can do after. All of these all done activities we have done in whole group first. So I'm not going to leave anything for them to do after we're all done that they don't know how to already do. And I'm also going to include some off-screen options and some on-screen options so that it's equitable. I like to try to get my kids off-screen on after they're done their math, just doing actual spatial reasoning, manipulating things, because primary grades, I just find it's a lot of screen time. So I'm trying to encourage lots of puzzles and magnetiles and Lego play after they're done, because that's what we would be doing in the classroom. We'd have those all done bins. But for our students who parents don't want them leaving the screen, I also have our coding and our Prodigy links in our virtual classroom for them to get to. And you could also include those links at the end of your Seesaw activity. If you don't have a separate virtual classroom, that's kind of your home base. And then this is all set up so that they can independently work for that full 20 minutes while I am working with a small group. So the way that I work out small groups is I will send them a different Google Meet link to their Seesaw activities. So it's an activity for them to complete, because then I can also do a follow-up question specifically with that small group for them to complete. So they click the link in their Seesaw activity and it brings them to a separate Google Meet. Now, something really important to remember is that when you are going onto a second Google Meet, you need to mute your first Google Meet so that you don't have all the feedback coming out of your computer screen for everybody to hear. So I'm now in a second Google Meet in a second tab. I've muted my main Google Meet. And because that main Google Meet is muted, I'm not going to be able to hear any questions that my main students have. So that's why I have this little, I have my be right back Bitmoji. So Mrs. Heistek is with the Pineapple group. She'll be back at 1:30 so that they have a time. It's usually the same time as what the timer in the corner is. It's synced with that. And so now my students know Mrs. Heistek is unavailable. My Google Meet is muted, my camera is off, and my microphone is off in my main meet. I'm meeting with my small group in a second Google Meet, and we're talking about, I'm doing small group instructions that's targeted towards that group's needs. And then the timer goes off. We all hang up on the second small group Google Meet, and we can come back to the main Google Meet. Now, this works well for my grade 2 students, because my grade 2 students are able to successfully go onto our virtual classroom, click on Meets, and go back to our main Meet as well. So they're able to click in and out of different Meets independently, because we've been doing this since September. So Laura is also going to give you a different option as to what she's doing in her grade 1 Meet if doing a separate option isn't good. I would say that the pro of doing the second link is that you are eliminating sharing audio with the whole class. So it's that small group accessibility, and our friends that are not getting off Google Meets aren't hearing our small group audio in their kitchen. So that's the pro.
Awesome. And so this is kind of our guided instruction. Do you want to talk about that, Laura?
Yeah, so the way that we kind of approach guided in my group, still doing those small groups, but when I first started in September, breakout rooms felt very overwhelming for myself, but also for a group of 6-year-olds to master. So we started our small groups just on one Google Meet, and I found that to be very successful, that I didn't feel the need to branch out and explore the next piece of technology. So what we do is the night before, so in the virtual school world, our schedule looks a lot different than what your schedule at your homeschool probably looks like. So I have the flexibility in grade 1 that my schedule is pretty much the same every single day. All of my majority of my prep coverage is at the end of the day, so I don't have to worry about the changes in my daily schedule. And that consistency has been really helpful for parents. So that would be something, if you're going to do small groups now, I would try and make them happen at consistent times throughout the day as much as possible. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do that always, just with different prep coverages, but that would be a big recommendation, so that students know when they have to be on, and that is staying consistent. I stay in one Google Meet, and the night before I post the schedule for parents to be aware of when their small group time is and when they need to have their student on our Google Meet. Students then have the option. So some of my friends are not able to leave a meet during the day and then rejoin later because they have multiple students at home and parents are doing so many things that was one more thing added to their checklist. So they have the option to stay on the whole group Google Meet, turn off their camera, turn off their microphone, go and do whatever activity they have been assigned. It might be a seesaw activity, it might be some scavenger hunt or exploration around their house, whatever it is that they are doing, just like we would in the classroom when they're doing literacy stations, they would be off doing that. And they do know I am available. So they do know that if parents have a really important question that they need, I'm still on the meet, they can hop in. 30 seconds is not going to be a big deal to take that out and answer that question. But for those little things that now is not the time to be asking Mrs. Wheeler how to do something, because in our stations, again, like Val said, we're sending them off to do things that we've already done together. They know how to do them. They're part of our routine. So they don't have very many questions about the process there. And then my students that I'm working with, they stay on that same Google Meet with me, and those are the ones that are participating. So a really big expectation was, if it is not your small group time, you are not unmuting to participate in this small group. My students who do not need to be on right now learning what the letter A looks like should not be jumping on to answer those questions and getting kind of their words in instead of the students that I'm supposed to be focusing on. And these, like, they blow my mind every single day with what they're able to do. These kids are amazing. So we are able to do that successfully. And the way I run my small groups is I see every student in a small group every single day. So they do this every single day of the week. So they are pros at what they should be doing during small group time and when it is their time to participate. And that just kind of helped make it a little less intimidating than tackling the whole breakout room option, which is a great option if you're there, but if you're not, it can be overwhelming.
It just repeats that whole idea, know your learners, right? Like, so who can handle what, and also how it takes time to teach kids these skills about learning back and forth, how to get in and out of a group. There were some questions there, Val, you were answering well in the chat. Can you just voice some of those concerns that Linda was having about 2 meets going and supervision?
For sure. So one of the reasons why I'm sending that link into the Seesaw activity is because iPad friends aren't able to click on the link in your Google Meet directly. So just to make it accessible for the iPad friends, I send that in that Seesaw activity. And then what was the other questions? Can students be connected to both? So yes, I would prompt your laptop friends to mute all, so make all 3 buttons at the bottom red before you're hopping onto the other one. But iPad friends, I don't think they're able to be in both at the same time.
So that's like a good measurement. If you can't find your mute button, you're not meeting with me in a small group yet.
Yeah. It's something
like when you get your mute badge, you can come in a small group with me.
Staying all on one meet really helped combat that problem, because I was having the problem where students disappear and then they don't come back. So suddenly we've broken off, tried to do a small group, they leave, and then I never see them again. So having them the option to stay on with just their camera off, their microphone off, made sure that I could still say their name and call them back to the screen when it was their turn, instead of disappearing for the rest of the day, which happened in September quite often. So
that might be the difference between grade 1 and then grade 2, 3. getting a little bit more technology independent. So
Yeah.
for sure.
I think
Well,
as teachers, we just want to do everything and we want to jump into everything right now and we want to have guided reading groups going like we used to. But just remember, we're just trying to get kids used to this platform and to start small or easy, and you don't have to do everything right now. This is just a way of how you can make it work and what you're comfortable for. And like Pam said, being responsive to your learners, knowing what
I think it's important to know your learners. Oops, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of a lag. I'm sorry. It's important to know your learners, but I think it's also really important to know you. And so in September, I knew breakout rooms was one more thing that was going to make this seem impossible for me. So that wasn't worth it for me right now. So figure out what you're going to spend the time on and master that first and get really good at that before you add on too many things. And it's already overwhelming. So we just need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves.
I was definitely not doing small groups week 2. So you guys are all rocking it.
How long did you find for your learners, Val? You have 2, 3, grade 2?
Just a straight 2.
Yeah. Can we just
we were doing
Val's screen? Can we just go back to Val's screen that you had about your timer and the return piece?
Yeah.
So just to like go along with the kids that are in the small group instruction, I bet you this is very supportive for the kids that aren't in that small group, right? So they have, they can count down and parents know when they come in, like, what are you supposed to be doing here? And you like, see, I'm 6 minutes, my teacher's coming back kind of thing, that countdown's happening. But would you consider this synchronous learning time, that when you have like the...
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is synchronous learning time for sure. Just also to note, this is my slide every single time, right? So we're always having what you're doing, what do you do when you're done, and how much time do I have to wait? Like we're always having our numbers and our steps, our words and our pictures and our timer countdown. So this isn't going to just be up when we're in small group. This is also for parents to check in to make sure that their kid is on task, if their parents happen to walk by, so these timers are up all the time during independent work time.
And pleased to hear you talk about synchronous learning. Like I know, Tanya, when you were talking about your experience in the virtual school, like helping me understand what synchronous learning is, like those words, synchronous and asynchronous, to have that balance back and forth. And so if we go back to, it means are we available to students? Yes. And it's just like we would be in the class. Like sometimes we're like right with everybody and other times we're focused in a small group and you have to wait your turn a little bit before the teacher's available.
And I just want to jump in and say that this was an awesome thing, being able to do these small groups, because you don't have to manage the rest of the class so much in the virtual world. You can just focus on that small group that you're talking with. And it was like a pleasant surprise of all of the things that are such a struggle. It's one thing that was just a really beautiful gift with this opportunity of being online.
So Tanya, there was a question, like, you take your small group and you're doing the learning with them. What happens with the others? Not just what are they doing, but what about that supervision piece there? Them in the room, but you're not with them.
So there are some options with that. Some teachers like to keep up both meets on their screen. So I was lucky to have a double screen. So I have a monitor and a laptop. So I would be able to kind of keep an eye on what was happening in that group. But the students are at home. So there's also an expectation that their parents are around and are also monitoring what is going on as well.
There was a question about where do you get your timer? So virtual school teachers, where are your favorites coming from?
Yeah, so I just Googled, YouTube's timers. So in the chat box, I wrote that you just go to insert on your Google Slides video, and then you can place a link directly into your Google slide that you can tap right into that. So I have one Google slide at the bottom that has all of my timers. So 10, 15, 20, 25, all of the increments on that last Google slide. So now I can just copy and paste them from that last slide into my timer on the slide that we're working on. So if you collect kind of a good range of timers, then it's easier just to copy and paste them later. But yeah, they're just coming from YouTube.
That is such a great idea.
I know.
Because I don't know how many times this week I've Googled this, like put in the YouTube search same timer. But if I had just collected the favorites of the dog barking when it's done and whatnot, then that would make life so much easier. Thank you.
Welcome.
Laura, who's the guy you were referencing earlier? You had a
Oh yeah,
Jack Hartman.
Just type in Jack Hartman, click enter, and virtual school is done. You're good to go. No, I'm just kidding.
It's incredible how the kids like absolutely love him.
So is he on YouTube or?
Yeah,
Okay.
all of it's on YouTube. Sight word review. We're doing 3D shapes tomorrow. I got a nice Jack Hartman song about 3D shapes. It's gonna be great.
You have your first educational crush. There you go.
Do we want to, Tanya, maybe, I don't know how many individuals there are that are not sure how to access, like how to put a hyperlink into a Google Doc. Could you maybe share your screen and just show quickly as a visual where to get that timer? And then you can also show how to get Jack Hartman.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that's great,
so-
Nicole. And while you're getting ready there, Tanya, because most people in grade 1, 2, and 3 are Seesaw people,
Yes.
but it looks like all you virtual school teachers use slides too. So would you recommend for our grade 1, 2, 3 teachers that that's something that they maybe explore to learn a little bit about slides? Okay.
Just to make your life easier,
Like,
I put everything in slides for the whole day so I don't have a million tabs open. All the videos, all the links, everything is just there. It just really simplifies finding everything.
Okay.
So Google Slides would be a must.
So Tanya, as you share your screen with us and create something in slides, I wonder how many people are going to have that connection to like, well, I can do this in Seesaw. Can I do it in slide deck? So it'd be interesting to see what we find.
Pam, I'm wondering maybe if the teachers here could write in the chat if they're interested, if they're unsure of really how to create the Google Slides, how to create their lessons on a Google slide, if maybe that's something like a direction to go next week, if they were interested. So if you are, just put in the chat that maybe that's something you're interested in.
Awesome. So what I did here was I have just our slide deck that we've been using here, and then I went into YouTube and I just typed in timers for kids, and I just found one that is here. And then I copied that code, so that URL for it, and I just did Control-C because I'm using a PC, and that makes it really friendly to do that. So then the next thing that you would do is click over here on that Insert button. And then you want to insert a video, and it will take it a minute because it's the internet and that happens sometimes. And it knows that we're probably going to want something in YouTube because everybody wants something from YouTube. So all you would do, it comes up a search immediate right away. So you would just, I'm doing Control and V, or you could just copy and paste that in there. And then when I hit that search button, that's the video that I had, and I click on it and hit select, and then it will embed itself right into my video, into my slide. So that's a really convenient way to have those videos right there and ready to go. And so when I were to click on it, when I'm ready to present, it will do that countdown of that timer.
Tanya, can we show that one more way? How to put that in? Do you ever go to insert video and search right from there? So if you go,
can.
Yep, that's the way I generally do it. I don't know if it's
right in here.
Yeah, so I go to search, and then timer, and it brings up the timers. And if I know I like my dog timer or my winter 10-minute timer, whatever it is, then it brings it up, and you just click it. and it puts the hyperlink right in there, and it has a picture that it automatically puts for that timer too.
Yeah,
So,
I
and then
have
select
often,
at the bottom. Yep.
Yep, and then it pops up. I think I've gotten into the habit of doing the other way because I like to search on YouTube. I just feel more comfortable with doing it that way, but that's awesome that you mentioned that there's another way to do that as well. And so
if
kind
you
of like
go
Val
back-
had mentioned before, we now have, I'm just going to finish this thought before I forget.
Yep.
We now have a couple different timers on this slide. So you might want to do this with a few different ones with a few different times. So that way you can have a few that are ready to go when you're ready to use the slides. And so you would just kind of copy. And again, I would do Control and C to copy. And I can put this into a different slide, and I would just do Control and V. And there's my slide with that timer if I wanted to have this on that slide.
So this might be a nice entry way of getting, like if it's lunch break and recess time, to create a Google slide, put a timer in, 20 minutes, and then share your screen in your Google Meet and take your break and kids go away. But then they know they're coming back in 11 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. So a nice, easy transition to that.
I know I've had a few times lately where like I have timers on some of my screens. Maybe it wasn't like the 10 minutes I wanted 5 minutes, but in the spot, I'm thinking, okay, let me quickly go to my insert 5-minute timer, pop it in. But if I had those slides right at the bottom, I just copy and paste it. Okay, kids, you know what? You're a little wiggly right now. This is time for break. Copy, paste, and I just share it big on my screen. And then when the timer's done, it goes off and it makes an alarm sound or a dog bark or whatnot. So the kids, like you can hear the background or a parent say, oh, it's time to be back. So.
That's awesome.
Another thing that I've done for that as well is if I wasn't totally sure how long, I knew that there would be a break at some point, but I wasn't sure, I would put in a timer that was longer than what I wanted. And then I would just put the slider on how much time they needed to come back. If I thought that if I ended up with more or less time.
Shortcut.
Than I thought
Yeah.
as
So
because sometimes you're more in that moment and you're so harried and you can't find, you can't search for one. So it just works.
So some definitely
I just wanted
people learning but more about Google Slides. So whatever you have, Tanya, keep going.
Sure. So just another thought with this is we've talked about this for slides, but this works as well if you have a video. So Laura and Val were expressing their love of the Jack Hartman videos earlier. You could do this with a Jack Hartman video as well. So you could go up here and find one that you wanted that he was talking about, whatever strategy, whether it be language or math or whatever you want it to do. So let's say we wanted him to do this one again, I would click on it from here, copy this URL, and I can paste it right into the slide. I'm going to use a different one here. And then you don't have to navigate and have a ton of different tabs up on your computer as well. Oh, I didn't insert it, sorry. And so that's really handy for that because I found that I would have all of these tabs and I would have things lost. So if you do it this way, like Laura was saying with planning her day, it's all ready to go. You can make it the size of the slide. And then when you're ready, you can just play it. You don't have to have a bunch of different things open all the time.
And what I've been finding lately too, is that if I play a link that's open in my tab up top, it doesn't seem to stream as well as when it plays in my Google slide. I find that I have better luck with it. It's less choppy. Maybe this is in my head, but I feel like it plays better embedded right in my Google Slides than it does playing the outside tab.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. It definitely helps make your internet connection stronger throughout the day. There's not so much going on your computer. And I've had the same thing where the videos just run smoother for students on the other end.
And then you can also embed your links into there too. So if you're not just doing videos, but say you wanted to go to a specific site, like you're doing an Estimastery or something like that, putting in the links into your Google Slides is another really important one that I use a lot. I use Jamboard more for instruction than I do for students using it now. That was one thing that I put a lot of energy into in the fall that didn't end up
Paying off for you.
it wasn't a big reward payoff because it's really it's not user friendly for iPads. So when I need to get to Jamboard, if I have my poem of the week on Jamboard so we can play I Spy, I'll have the picture of the poem on our Google Meet, and then I'll embed the link into the picture, and then that'll bring us to our Jamboard right away, just so that we're not like waiting, okay, hang on, let Mrs. Heistek open up a new tab, type in the URL, then click on the right Jamboard file, and then we're up. It just erases some of that transition time.
And I know, like, you may feel I'm so overwhelmed already with all, and I'm sorry, my dog is barking, but you may feel overwhelmed. I have all these things to learn about virtual. Google Slides is just something else, but I'll say I couldn't live without Google Slides now. Like, I really think it's a big part of how it manages my day easier. So, and I think we're hearing some of the other teachers find that too. So, you know, with a little bit of help and maybe a bit of modeling, we can see how it would really, like, you'd be able to see how it can really work for you.
I think that's.
And I think that a lot of teachers were already using Smartboard.
Yes.
Sorry, I think that our internet is not being friendly together, but a lot of teachers would have their schedule kind of planned on Smartboard and they would flip through. And so I think of Google Slides or Jamboard as kind of being an extension of that, a virtual option.
I just echoing the same thing, Tanya, like the skills are so transferable. That's great. And who was it? Val, were you saying you had shared some of your slide deck in the Seesaw activity library? Is that what you had shared?
I didn't share the Google. I don't think you can share Google's. I could share it into our Google Drive.
Yeah, what was it that you shared in Seesaw activities though?
I shared my reading choice boards. So that's something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's just an activity, but we had talked about that, Pam, about how important it is to get into those community seesaws so you are not recreating the wheel all the time. I think I spent a lot of time just creating seesaw activities at the beginning, just because I wanted it all to be mine and I wanted my students to be able to experience everything that I'm doing. But I think that you can just assign it and then go back and edit and put your own voice into what they have already done.
All those things,
yeah. So sometimes I was like, oh, I don't want somebody else's voice on talking to my kids, but all that is editable. So you just make sure that you have to assign it and then go back and edit it, because it won't give you that copy and edit option before you assign it.
Well, that just links to that, you know, as teachers in the brick and mortar schools are trying to figure out how to build that online community. What you just said there, the power of your own voice and keeping connected with kids is so important. And like having your own slide deck with your own look, you know, your Bitmoji in there if you're into that, or, you know, your real image, those things are really helpful in helping keep kids engaged and feeling connected. So that's great.
And you can post, like, for our parents, because we have a few that are option 2. So I take my slide deck and from Google and I download it as a PDF on my computer, and then I post the PDF onto their Seesaw. So then all the links are clickable for them and they still have access to everything that we live. That's what I do as an option for that. So they can still have access to the slides, or later they didn't get to something, they wanted to watch it, they can go back and click.
So that's good. It just seems like this Google Slide is such a great flexible tool for supporting one while you're teaching. It's a good teaching tool. It's good about transitioning, managing your Google Meets and that sort of piece. There is one more question here. We haven't, if we could cycle back to thinking about that small group, and if it's happens to be a guided reading time. So Val and Laura and Lorene and Tanya, like in your experience, what were you using in that for resources for guided reading? And the thing probably people most have access to is Epic. So how might we use something like that?
Yeah, so so again, just the share presenting screen, right? So you just share a tab over to your Epic book that you want to talk about with that guided reading group. And then everybody has access to reading that that book on your screen.
I've also done it where I take screenshots of different things that I'm doing and embed it right into my Google slide. And then I can mark it up as we're looking at it. I can use my pointer tool on Google Slide to highlight a specific word I want them to find, or I can circle a specific part of that word if we're learning a certain word pattern and I want to highlight that on words they're struggling with. You embed that in. I don't use Epic for my small groups. I use mostly the LLI books. So if your school has an LLI kit and a code, that's always a great option. Those are really good leveled books. Epic books can be a little hit or miss with the appropriate levels, but it's a great option there if we don't have access to anything else. Or Raz Kids. And I know we have access to Raz Kids. So again, that's if you have that.
Laura, I'm going to bring you back because I know we're using language now that maybe, so when you say screenshot, I know on my MacBook, I have a screenshot tool that's embedded right into my MacBook, but for our teachers that are using Google, what are you using for screenshotting?
So I do everything on my Mac. So I can screenshot everything on my Mac, but sometimes I have to go and cross over to the dark side of a PC and go downstairs and use my husband's. And so every time I do that, I honestly just have to Google how to screenshot on a PC, and a YouTube video comes up and I'm like, oh, right, that's how you do this. Right.
There's also,
if you do have a PC, it's not as user-friendly for screenshotting.
So there's a Google extension to do if you guys are interested in that aspect of it. It's a light shot tool, Google extension. If you guys are interested in doing that, but I just wanted to slow you down because I know you said screenshot, and then your other friends are like, oh.
Yeah, I know on a Mac I click Command-Shift-4. That's how I do it on a daily basis. I know Tanya just popped in the chat there.
I was just gonna say, Tanya, you need to, I think this comes up every session, but you honestly need to share it again because I use it
the snip
a
tool
times a day. Yes, you need to share again.
Awesome. So this is an option for any PC that you have. You would hit that Windows button, the Shift button, and the S all at the same time. And then there'll be like a grayed out thing. So let's see when I do that. I'm not screen sharing, so you're not going to see. So let me screen share here so you can see what this looks like.
What were the three buttons again, Tanya?
So the Windows key, the Shift key, and S all at one time. And then it will kind of gray out your screen like this. And then you can choose what portion you want to select. And it creates it as a clip, like a snippet. So then if you go to wherever you wanted to put it and you do that Control V or with your mouse, that kind of right click and paste, then that will paste that wherever you want it to. And I've seen that someone else also mentioned that there is an extension, and I use this extension, which you can probably see on my screen right here, a ton as well. And it allows you to just kind of screenshot from here. And so once you're at this stage, I would hit that Control C, and then it again creates it as a clip so that I can paste that onto whatever I want to paste. But this Windows, the PC method is fantastic. So if you had something as a PowerPoint, for example, or something saved to your computer, you can use this way to do that, whereas the extension tool is an option.
And with
and on my computer, I have like a little pair of scissors icon that's at the bottom of the toolbar. And it's in the Windows as well. If you just go in there and search and just write snip into your search, you will get that app and you can add it to your toolbar at the time. It is my favorite tool. And you should see, I have a long story to tell you someday about the day I taught my father, who's 81, that he doesn't actually have to print things, cut them out and scan them to get them into his document. It was a big thing. So yeah, it's my favorite tool too. So
and with
snippet.
That tool too, Tanya, instead of copying and pasting, there's also an option to save it to your computer so that when you go to Seesaw, then you can upload it because there's not the copy and paste option in Seesaw. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
So you can copy and paste in Seesaw if you hit the Control C button. But if you try to do it from your mouse, it doesn't work. It's not friendly in that way.
See, virtual teachers.
Something
Yeah. But to go back to the reading point is if you found a text anywhere, like you had a PDF version or something, and you use that snippet tool or, screen capture tool, then that can be put on your whiteboard and you're running your guided reading lesson like you would have done, or a, shared reading lesson, or you're doing a mapping activity and anything. So, check out the snip tool. It's a good one.
Yeah,
It's also great just for read alouds in general, because like sometimes like I have the book and I want to read it to the story and like you're holding it right to the screen for them. The alternative is a YouTube video, somebody reading the book, which you may or may not like that. So I will often take pictures of whatever book it is we're going to be doing as a read aloud. So it's on their screen nice and big. They can see the pictures while I'm reading in the background. So I'm still reading them the story, but they can see those pictures and those words nice and big on their screen instead of trying to figure out what I'm holding all the way back here.
Yeah, and this is where Jamboard also is nice, because if you copy and paste one of those pictures into Jamboard, now all of a sudden it's interactive like your smart board, and you can start underlining all of your word family words for this week and really get interactive with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to walk through showing that. So I just put up a book from Epic, and then I just did my screen share there. And this toolbar, there we go. And then I opened up a Jamboard as well. And so I'm just going to do that Control V, and it pastes it right in here. Sometimes it can take a while if your internet is being goofy, which mine usually is at this time of night because everyone comes home and wants to use the internet. But then you can use those features on the side over here to be able to mark it up. So you could use the pen tool. This one is probably one of my favorites. It's the laser tool. So if I want to refer to something, I can highlight it, bring attention to it, but then it doesn't stay there forever. Another option that I've learned that kind of made me go, wow, is another extension that you can use, and it's called this Web Paint option. And it allows you to write right on the screen. So if you have like a book from Epic and you wanted to talk about this word here, you can use these tools to kind of write on it or highlight and different things like that. The problem with this though is that it doesn't stay forever. So when you move away from this or you want to click to the next page, you have to kind of deactivate this in order for you to be able to move on to the next thing.
Like get your mouse back.
So we can see that I deactivated it and it's gone. Yeah, but it's really great if things just aren't working and you need a moment to just write on that screen. So that one was Web Paint is an option that is there for you. For that.
Oh, I think I learned this, Teresa, the hard way too. When presenting, sometimes students are saying they cannot see the presented screen. Is there tips or suggestions for this? What may be the reason for this happening? I think it has something to do with pinning your page too, maybe in Google Meet.
Yeah, so sometimes students might pin a page, which is that little, looks like a push pin in the corner, and then they're stuck on that screen until they choose to move to a different one. So you might have to tell them to unpin their page so that they can see whatever you're projecting. Another thing that sometimes happens is if you click on the wrong tab, which I tend to do if I don't embed everything into my slideshow, because I get a ton of different tabs up and then I lose everything. So for example, if you're trying to do a Go Noodle and you think that you are projecting that and you're dancing with the kids and you don't actually have that projected to them, all they see is you dancing and whatever last screen you had up that you were presenting, which is super fun. But to avoid that on Google Meet, you can see that there is it tells you that you're presenting on that tab, and you can easily just move between the tabs. You don't have to go out of it to go back into it. Sometimes that's a fix.
Tanya, has that been working for you this week to switch between tabs? Because every time I do that,
I haven't used it.
I get kicked out.
So there must be maybe a new glitch with it.
It works on my Mac. It does not work on my school computer this week to switch back and forth between sharing tabs.
Yeah,
and I didn't
works
know.
Okay for me this week.
Okay, so just me.
Just you. You're special, Laura. Sorry.
I'll just suffer through. Okay.
That's a good tip though, because I think it's right beside your stop sharing or share this tab instead, and it's easy to miss.
Mhm.
And I didn't figure that out for a while too, that I kept like going back into present, stop presenting, share a new tab, but you can switch between tabs really easy by just saying share this tab instead, but you have to look because it's easy to miss.
Well, I'm going to be the person that says time to go home from the party, ladies and gents. 4:30, 4:31. So, oh, hi, Judy. Do you want to wave at us or ask a question in live?
I do have a question. Can you direct me to someone that can help with some sharing my screen technical difficulties I'm having, especially around sound and connectivity?
Sure, I can help you with that. We can have a meet after.
Private showing with Tanya. Awesome. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you. Thanks, Tanya. I'll wait around.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, well, thanks so much for coming out today. Your contributions are really well appreciated from the virtual school. Thanks for taking the time to do that. And we'll have the recording up. I think, Rod, you're back here to tell us we have a good one today.
I think so. I'll let you know if I get any problems, but it should be good.
Sounds good.